Hello? If you're watching this, you're part of the HCHS Electrathon software team. So welcome, and we hope you have fun this year and do good this year, especially as a software dev. So what this series of videos really is it's intended for you guys in future years, just to make it as easy as possible to kind of pick up where we left off. So in this particular video, I'm going to be showing you what you need to download and how to download, the requirements for picking up the existing code base. So there's 4 things you're going to need to download. And this series and this video in general assume that you have no prior experience. So if you know how to download stuff, you can just see in the description what you need to download, click the links and be good. But this is just going to be like a comprehensive guide. It's going to show you what settings to get and just everything you need to do to pick up where we left off without any errors. So like I said, there's 4 things you need to download. One being Visual Studio Code, one being GitHub Desktop. This is technically optional, but if you're starting out, you're definitely going to want GitHub Desktop. You're also going to want Git, which notice Git is different from GitHub Desktop. And finally, you're going to want Python 3, which Python 3 is Python, really. Like when you hear Python, they're likely talking about Python 3. So let's start out with Visual Code. Ideally, you would be using Chrome or something, but this is a fresh Windows installation. So there's nothing that I have on my computer right now that you wouldn't have on yours. And as far as non-Windows, I will potentially make a Ubuntu version of this video at some point, but it's really the same stuff. And if you're using Ubuntu, you probably already know what you're doing, so you should be fine. So also, realistically, you should probably download all these at once just to save time. But just to make it more simple, I'm going to go one by one and just minimize confusion. So I shouldn't have skipped a few of these settings here when we go back. So you can accept the agreement. This is just where Visual Studio Code downloads to. So it'll be where it's stored on your computer. The default's fine, but if you want to change that, it won't affect the rest of the video. And then this makes it so when you go here, you can search Visual Studio Code and it'll be there. So I recommend doing that. And then, so these settings, add to path, definitely do that. That makes it so you can access it from the root command prompt and it applies it to all users. And then I recommend doing add open with code. This makes it where, say you have a Python file and you right click on it, then it'll prompt you to open it directly in code and it just kind of makes it faster and minimizes clicks. I don't like the desktop icon, and I recommend adding it as an editor for supported file types. So next, then we can just download it. Okay. So what Visual Studio Code is, it's a text editor, meaning text files on your computer. It opens them and allows you to type in them with also, it has like a lot of extensions you can use, which we'll get into right now, where you can just, it makes editing your code easier, faster, less bugs, just more efficient. So actually it's the first one on here, it's Python. Python extension by Microsoft, install that. And this just makes it easier to write Python in Visual Studio Code. So once that installs, you should have 3 things installed here because the Python module in Visual Studio Code has dependencies. So you'll see it's installing a few things, but Python needs those other things to work. So if you see like this, that's fine. And if you want to download other ones, if you have more here, that's fine. It won't affect, it's not like they cancel each other out or anything. So that's Visual Studio Code. Minimize that. And let's move on to Git. I'm skipping GitHub Desktop because GitHub Desktop is reliant on Git. So we can go to Git. Okay, we can just go here, download the latest version for Windows, and make sure you're downloading the latest version for whatever you're downloading. But also make sure it's the latest stable version. Don't download like a beta unless you just know what you're doing and there's some feature that you like. I just recommend going for the stable version. So that's done. We can open that. And what Git does, it is a version control software, meaning that it kind of scans over the code that you write, and whenever you make a change, it acknowledges that and it kind of caches it, and then you can make a commit. I'm gonna make a video on Git in the future, by the way. But it's like an introduction. You make a commit, which is like a almost like a save state that you can revert back to if you want to. So like one potential situation where Git would be useful. Say yesterday you were writing the app and you had it perfect and like you had it perfect and you saved it and you made a commit. And then today you did some editing and you kind of messed some stuff up. Instead of trying to type and go and just kind of remember what you did and go back, you can just discard all your current changes and go back to that commit you made yesterday. And also it's really good for collaboration. That's more of the GitHub side, but it allows you, oh, you make your branch and make your code, and then your teammate makes their branch and makes their code, and then you combine them automatically. It just makes it more efficient. You don't have to like send chunks of code between each other. So as for these settings, unlike Visual Studio Code, you can kind of go defaults, but I'll just kind of scan over. So I'd go default here. This will make it, like I said, where you can type Git here. You're never gonna need to open Git by itself really, but just continue on. Here, I would just change this to Visual Studio Code because that's what we're using. What Git decide? Okay, you do the third option here. That's fine. That's fine. And like I'm just doing like what I prefer and recommend. Do what you want. And even if you don't know what it is, just experiment with different stuff. The difference isn't realistically that big. Go for the second option here though. Default. That's not really a big deal, but go for that one. That's fine. I would check this. We're probably never going to use this, but I recommend checking that one. And then install. So like Git, it's not really something that you run. It's more of just like kind of a background thing. But Visual Studio Code's Git module and GitHub Desktop rely on Git to run. So that's really why we're downloading this. So we don't need to launch Git Bash, and we don't need to view the release notes. We can just finish, and we're done with Git. So now we can move on to GitHub Desktop. And this is the only one you're gonna want to make or you can make accounts for like you can make a Visual Studio account kind of, but you need to make a GitHub account because that's how you log in and save your stuff, and that's also how you join the Electrathon group and collaborate with your teammates. So while this is downloading, if I were you, I would make an account if you don't already have one. Okay, it's scanning for viruses, so okay, we're good. So once that downloads, open that. Okay, so it's installing. So I guess while that's installing, we can do a pro tip here. Go to Task Manager, more details, startup, and disable. So uh, when you disable something in the startup tab, it makes it where it doesn't run when your computer runs automatically. So that can increase, or it'll increase your efficiency, but it'll decrease load times. And like say, if you open your computer and you have a ton of programs instantly open up, you can go here and disable them. And also one other thing I recommend doing, is going to options always on top. That way if something crashes, you can open up Task Manager and it'll be stacked on top of that. So that's just a little random tip there. So this is where you'll need to log in. I guess I can go through the account making process. So we can sign in. We can create an account. Now I'm just going to log into my account, but you would create an account. So once you sign in, it's going to ask you to open the GitHub desktop app from your browser. Click open, and then it's going to like communicate between the two, and then you're good to finish here. So as you can see, you won't have anything in the repositories, but I already have my account. So at this point, you have GitHub. The next step for you in terms of GitHub is whoever the GitHub admin is, or like whoever's the head of software, they'll have the administrative privileges on the GitHub organization, and you can give them your email, and they can add you, and then you'll be in it. So that doesn't exist now, and it will in future videos. You can kind of see how that works. But all you need to download it is just be at this step. So once you're here, you're good. You can close that out. Actually, we can minimize like we did for Visual Studio, but it doesn't matter either way. So that's those things. The last one we're going to want is Python 3. So we can go to, we don't want Python 3.0. We want the latest version of Python 3, which is likely, okay, Python 3.9.5 is currently the latest version. So we can download this. And that's done. So we can run it. Okay, so like I said, definitely add it to path. And also, you don't have to install for all users, but I like to. It just makes it easier for me. If you're sharing a computer, you should probably do it just for yourself, but the distinction isn't very large. So I'm just going to look at the optional features to make sure this is all good. You definitely need pip. Make sure that's checked. So like I said, you can kind of, it doesn't really matter if you install for all users, but notice it will change the install location. So I'm going to install for all users, and then in future tutorials, if we ever have to mess with this folder, that's where it'll be. So just for the sake of the tutorials, do install for all users. And these last two don't really matter, but I recommend the first set. So we can install, click yes, and that's installed. Also, I don't know if I said this originally, but these tutorials, they presume that you don't know anything about computer programming, or like as you can see in this video, you don't know anything about downloading stuff. So they're going to be really basic and entry level. And if you feel that you know even a little bit about what's going on, just skip. There's no point in really watching the fine details of these unless you just want to, or you don't know how to do what I'm doing here. So this doesn't really matter, the disabling length limit, but click yes. And that was successful, so we can close. And that's all you need. So just to do some testing, we can close out our browser, and you can see it add this to the desktop. Delete if you want to. So we go into Visual Studio Code here, and I'm just going to make a new file on my desktop. Call it app.py. And then, so this is one of the settings you'll see. If you right click, this open with code thing, that's one of the boxes we checked earlier. And if you open with code, it'll open the file in here. Okay, I'm glad this popped up because this is something you need to do. You see here how I called this app.py, but it opened app.py.txt. You need to go to File Explorer, View, and check file name extensions. I'm glad that came up because the .text, this is a type of file, and .py is a different type of file. That's a Python file. So you need to change the .text to a .py to make it Python file. So we can kind of restart our process, and you can see the icon changed. So we can open with code again, and okay, here it'll see, and then you can see here where the Python logo, the Visual Studio Code recognized the Python logo. So it just opened up this randomly, close it. So just to test this is working, we can just print hello. And printed hello. Nice. So I'm just going to go over a few possible bugs that may occur. So you should see at the bottom left, it should say Python, whatever version you downloaded. So if it doesn't, click this, go to Enter Interpreter Path, find, it'll open up this. Now you're going to need to go to wherever you downloaded Python. So if you remember, I downloaded it for all users and it was in that program files. So that's this PC, local disk. I can't even recall if it was x86 or regular. I'm going to go regular. So you can see Python 3.9. And then you would select python.exe. So do that if that doesn't work and it doesn't say Python in the bottom left. And also, you might have noticed here when I said print, it automatically pulled up print. And that's thanks to this Python IntelliSense that we downloaded. So the last step is really connecting Visual Studio Code to GitHub. This makes it so much easier because, like, say I made a change, print hello. You save that. Then you can go here and push that to your GitHub, and then your teammates can instantly see what you just did. So you'll see we need to open a folder containing a Git repository. So that's relying on GitHub. So I'm going to go to GitHub. And just for this, I'm going to make a new repository. But actually, I might be able to clone the... Okay, let me see if I can find okay, HC Electrathon dashboard. That is the current repository that we're working in. So we can go to, if you just go to the github.com tab, you see HC Electrathon, that's the group. And then dashboard is the repository, and that's just like a project really. Repository is a project. So you can clone. What clone does is it takes it from GitHub servers, copies it, and puts it on your machine. So you can see here, we now have the dashboard on our machine. So you can open in Visual Studio Code, and that automatically opens. That's part of why I use Visual Studio Code. So we can actually close out this old version. You'll see here, this is the first year. So likely for you, hopefully for you, there will be a lot more here. I don't know, hopefully be a lot more complex. But right now we have a README, and a README is just kind of in programming, it's just kind of like, it kind of gives you like the gist of what's going on. So we have a README here. So let's just say we change this. You just say like hi here. You should notice that this left source control tab, it has like a notification, and that indicates a pending change. And a pending change is a difference between what's on GitHub servers and what's on your machine. Or realistically, it's the difference between a past commit and the current state of your project. So I kind of show you what a commit is. So if you go to the Git tab here, you'll see it'll have all the files that you changed, and it'll show you kind of what you did. If you click on here, it shows before and after. So you can kind of compare in real time what you changed to the file. And that's helpful to kind of just get a gist of what you just did. Then you can add a message here. Let's say you want to make them kind of descriptive, but not overly long, because this is just kind of like a snapshot of what you did in this change. So I'm going to say added hi to readme. So you can click the check, and it should say there are no staged changes to commit. And staging a change means taking that file that you changed and putting it in a new commit, because you can change only some files, but I always just push them all out just to keep everything updated. So click yes here, I wouldn't go for always, but I would click yes. And that made a commit. So now on your computer, there are two versions of this. There's the version without the high and the version with the high. But you'll notice that on the GitHub servers and what your teammates can see, there is only the version without the high. So what you need to do is go into GitHub desktop, and you'll see here that you can push origin. For you, it'll likely say push commit or maybe push commits, but you can push origin, and that takes what you have and gives it to GitHub. And that's what pushing is taking it from your machine and giving it there. Cloning is taking it from there and getting it to your machine. So now you have just changed a file on the HC Electrathon GitHub on your computer, and you've given it back to them. So I think this wraps up the tutorial. You now know how to use Python in Visual Studio Code, how to use Git and Python together in Visual Studio Code, and you know how to interact with GitHub to communicate with your teammates and save your work. So if you've gotten this far, good job. And these tools will really help you in the software dev journey in Electrathon. It would be a lot less efficient to write in a text, just like almost like a Google Docs editor, because some of the stuff, especially in Visual Studio Code, you'll see later, is really helpful. So that will wrap up this. You can exit out of these. You can delete the app.py. You can delete the shortcuts, and then you can notice if you search Visual Studio Code, it's there. One of the things I recommend doing is pinning to start. So then if you open up here, or if you open up the actual start menu, it'll be here. It'll be here. Yeah, that's what I mean. So that's this video. Thank you for watching, and good luck in Electrathon.